What's up, everyone? Welcome into the Dear Miss Fantasy Show with me, your host, Sarah Roberts. This is the official mailbag show for Player Profiler. It is Wednesday, June 17th. I'm live taking your questions, and we've got some fun topics to cover this week because we did not get to cover everything that I wanted to cover last week. So we're going to double back to some news that we didn't touch on. We got some Rashee Rice news out of prison. We saw the video of him doing a light jog out of prison, avoiding paparazzi, getting into the car, and hopefully not speeding away. It looked to be maybe a reasonable pace, but he wasn't driving. So I think we're good. And we'll tie that into Patrick Mahomes as well. Talk about them because I got some interesting comments. I do a lot of side videos, right? That are not always posted to my YouTube channel for other places. And they garner a lot of comments, a lot of feelings, right? And I learned that people are not feeling Patrick Mahomes. Very interesting. So I wanted to discuss that as one of our main points here. I do think we should talk about the Atlanta Falcons. I don't think anybody wants to, but I think we have to. Harvey had off-season shoulder surgery we can talk about. And then some other stuff from last week as well. We can do a little Dynasty talk on Brendan Sorsby. So let's dive into it. And as always, of course, ask your questions in the chat. Let me say hello to the chat. Who is in? Big Noggin is in here. What's up? Easy E is in here as well. Welcome. And Stephen King is in the chat. Welcome, guys, as you are joining in. Feel free to jump in the chat to discuss, drop some comments, questions, anything. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Why not start off with Rashee Rice, right? Who doesn't want to? Who doesn't love that and the chaos that he brings? He's out, people. What will remain to be seen is how that 30 days of prison rehab went. Now, I know a lot of people say, oh, you can rehab in prison. Jail. Sorry, let me not say prison. There's a difference. Ask Cat Williams. Jail time or whatnot. There's no real way to know. We're just going to have to see and get updates, hopefully a little more information on the team in terms of timelines and whatnot. But it's June. He has a few months in order to actually get back with trainers and be with them throughout the entire day and get back on track here because he is very critical to this offense. And it's very interesting, right? Because his ADP is going to be one that always remains a little bit in flux. It's good that it came down a little bit. But it's right back up because at the end of the day, he's now wide receiver 12. That's behind, obviously, our big guys, right? But then it's guys like Drake London, Nico Collins, A.J. Brown, rising up the rankings a little bit there. George Pickens as well, Chris Olave, and then Rashee Rice. And Rashee Rice is above guys that have their own issues in terms of quarterbacks and injuries and situational problems. It's Tedero McMillan that's after him. Malik Neighbors, obviously, with the knee injuries, dropping a little bit there. We can discuss Neighbors a little bit if you guys want there. Then, Devonta Smith, and then you get into kind of like the, T. Higgins, Zay Flowers, Garrett Wilson, Lad McConkey kind of range, right? So when you're looking at Rashee Rice, he remains a top 12 pick, because we know the upside is absolutely ridiculous. When he was on the field last season, I want to get the exact numbers in terms of the minimal amount of games, right? Because that's the other thing. Just stay on the field, man. But once he served his 6-game suspension last year. Once he served that 6-game suspension, he came back literally to the level of volume that we expected, right? It was off the charts. 10 targets, 9 targets, 7 targets was against Buffalo, very understandable. 9 against Denver, 12, 8 against Houston, 11 Chargers, right? Over that time period, he had, 7 touchdowns? Yeah, 7 touchdowns. No, way. Yeah, wait, hold on. What was it? 6 total. One was what am I looking at here? Yeah. I'm getting a little bit confused because one was a rushing attempt. 6 total touchdowns over that time period, qualified as a rushing attempt. But 6 touchdowns over that time period. He is the undisputed wide receiver 1. When he was on the field playing with Patrick Mahomes, as long as the matchup wasn't an absolute nightmare like Denver, you were getting top 10 production from him. Xavier Worthy arguably was not himself. I'm actually going to talk a little bit about Xavier Worthy in a video that I'll drop either later this week or early next week on my YouTube channel. Because perhaps I'm being a little bit harsh on Xavier Worthy and his performance last year, because he was dealing with playing through a shoulder injury, right? And so you can arguably say that maybe that affected him a little bit. He did miss a tiny bit of time there. Was he 100% as he was playing through the injury? That's up for debate. But it was disappointing to not see him really step up in the time frame that Rashee Rice was not active, and really step up and be a, not even just a true wide receiver one, but a guy that at the very least could cosplay as a wide receiver one for the time being. So I worry that he is still more of a secondary option, gimmicky, someone who can never really just handle that level of volume. And the way that the Chiefs offense operates anyway, we got to admit, like, Rashee Rice plays the majority of his snaps out of the slot there. So they enjoy targeting that usage and targeting that specific position a lot. That's why Travis Kelce thrived for so many years as well. Obviously, deep ball is not a problem. That was Tyreek Hill's responsibility, but they really haven't gotten somebody to really truly replace. So can you replace the Tyreek Hill? But even just a little bit there. So, and they did not add that as well. So the assumption should be that we should continue to get, well, with Rashee Rice on the field, him being in that very safe 8 to 12 target range on a weekly basis, good yardage, and seeing the uptick in red zone usage in particular, in the little bit of time that he played with Patrick Mahomes, was really beautiful there. It is risky, right? Because you're making an investment that is of a decent, thank God it's not like a top 5 kind of pick, right? But it's a decent low-end wide receiver one investment into a guy who at any given point in time during the season could step into a stupid situation. And unfortunately, as we kind of discussed with his legal issues, if he were to get any kind of infraction, more than likely that's a probation violation. You would immediately be at risk of losing him for the season. So there is a massive inherent risk that you are taking with Rashee Rice. And because of the fact that he has so much upside as a wide receiver one for Patrick Mahomes, we're not going to get a massive discount. No matter how much legalese you read, unfortunately, at no point will he ever dip into closer to the wide receiver 20 range, right? As long as he is active and healthy and on the field. So that's it with him, right? It's just a risk that you have to be willing to take, knowing that you're crossing your fingers that he can have a chauffeur, stay out of trouble, not make poor choices, and stay on the field, right? Jumping here to the comments, Donald Glassby says, you can't go wrong with a guy named Rice. That's true. Unless it's the son of a Rice. That did not pan out so well from a production standpoint. But for the most part, yeah, we love the last name Rice. And then Joey, the Joey Wright. I've never actually read your username like that. That's funny. Joey Wright in the chat says, love that you were speaking on Rice. I think there's a smart way of drafting him. I think too, right? Because the upside is so high, you hate to miss out on it. But perhaps when you're looking at it, maybe this is the one situation where you do want to double stack with a wide receiver, with a pass catcher at the very least, and I kind of did that actually early in a best ball draft. Drafted Rashee Rice, or now granted, this was before the jail time. Drafted Rashee Rice, then drafted Patrick Mahomes, and then stacked it later as a tight end premium with Travis Kelce, because with my skepticism of Xavier Worthy, we know that Travis Kelce is still going to get targets. We've seen it dwindle down to a very specific number over the past several years. I don't want to rattle that number off the top of my head. I want to pull it up for you guys. It has been, last time he hit 1,000 yards was 2022. But over the past 2 years, it has been between 800 and 850 in terms of yardage. And for the past 3 seasons, he's had between 3 and 5 touchdowns, which at the end of the day, right, as long as you're not drafting him in an egregious ADP, right, which now it's come down to a reasonable extent, right, you know that he's going to be a volume guy, being probably the second look in that offense. So if you want to, if Rice were to go down, in theory, we would have to see probably Travis Kelce try to double back to, and he did for what it's worth there for a little bit. The start of the season was shaky, But at some point, he did kind of catch his stride a little bit, but then Patrick Mahomes got hurt, so it didn't really matter, right? Like there was that Denver game where Rice was obviously clamped down by the secondary. Travis Kelce had 9 receptions on 13 targets for 91 yards and a touchdown, right? So he's still got some juice. As long as we're paying like tight end 12 or 13, maybe even 11, but more so like low end tight, very, very like borderline tight end 1, tight end 2. Maybe you do that in terms of saying, like, I know I'm drafting Rashee Rice. There's inherent risk. I'm going to have to add a pass catcher, be that Travis Kelce or Xavier Worthy, or maybe you even take a shot. And like, we'll have to see how the younger guys pan out. I know maybe Jalen Royals, maybe one of the mid-round rookies or something, but see how it pans out in training camp and who is really garnering that third look. Not third, because Travis Kelce, third look in the receiving core, right? Who would be the guy that would step up if Rashee Rice was to forget to use his Uber, as Champion's Horse said so kindly. Yeah, does he not know? It's so funny when we talk about this. Like, I would love to just like be PR management for an athlete. Just like, hey, I can fix all of the potential legal. I get you a buddy, a chaperone, a driver. There are ways to prevent all of this, particularly in season. So hopefully the Chiefs can take a logical approach in terms of ensuring that this man is not in any compromising positions and can make it through the entire season, right? But again, we do have to see how this little, surgery cleanup situation, rehab kind of went and how he's looking on the field and whatnot once he actually gets on there. So, Falls Junior Indian says, if you take Rice, you have to have a string of wide receivers just in case he acts up. Yeah, and that's where taking a hero RB approach might be I love hero RB, right? But taking a hero RB approach and really using those mid rounds to kind of pound wide receiver, because there's a lot of value, guys. I mean, I've dropped a few videos about some of my, there's a lot of value. I feel comfortable skipping over that kind of weird. Now, granted, I do like some of the low end wide receiver twos, but like a skip over the Jalen Waddle kind of range of uncomfortableness, right? You get to like a Luther Burden, Jameson Williams, who we love, but obviously we know there's a certain limitation there, right? And you skip all past that and you get to the range where you can take a risk on some of the rookies, right? Like a Jordan Tyson, right? Mekhi Lemon. You get to the Quentin Johnson area, who you guys know that I love a lot. Josh Downs is looking like somebody who is going to get a significant boost in volume with the Michael Pittman exit, because you got to remember, while obviously Michael Pittman and Josh Downs are two wildly different body types, Pittman was the shorter area possession receiver. So his existence combined with Tyler Warren is what really screwed over Josh Downs last year. So Pittman exiting is going to open up things nicely for Tyler Warren and Josh Downs to play well off of each other in the short and intermediate area there. So I'm very excited for Josh Downs. And especially because we also see some injury stuff with Alec Pierce as well. But yeah, you get into this range where there's guys that you can take chances on, right? Parker Washingtons and whatnot. So yeah. hit and make sure that your bench is stacked and that you won't be in a very compromising situation. Jeremy Wilson says, smash that like button for Tara. Thank you. Appreciate that. I never ask. I always forget. My greatest flaw in content creation is not saying, please like and subscribe. I forget. Then we got a comment from Nick Taylor. Oh, hey, Nick Taylor says, going to the Boston Scott Fish Bowl, nice, in July. When would you draft Rice? I have, you have the 101. Good question. I have, that's going to be interesting because we've got all of the cool bonuses, right? The video game bonuses, which are fun. I'm not going to lie. I've already scoped out, because I think it's like you get 300-yard passing yards and you get a bonus for quarterbacks. I've already scoped out and thinking oh yeah, I'm going to be in QB2 heaven here with the volume, the non-rushing quarterbacks like a Jared Goff that's going to hit 300 and get that bonus. So not going to lie, I've been thinking about the quarterbacks and the bonuses. I have not been thinking about Rashee Rice in there, but in a tournament like the Scott Fish Bowl, that's where I would take chances. I get more risky. I do like a little bit of safety, but I tend to get a little bit riskier within the Scott Fishbowl just because you need that upside in order to try to, sorry, you guys could hear my text message. I forgot to mute my computers. Need that upside to really try and push past the crowd, make it through to the playoffs and progress forward. So I'm willing to take more risks there. I mean, with the 101, I'll have to think about that and get back to you. I'll think about it and then maybe comment on the video or talk about it because I have not thought about where I would draft him personally, but I think he's worth it for sure. For sure. In the chat here, the Tootsie Pop 6, that is Rachel in the chat, saying she's looking forward to tomorrow. I'm doing a Twitter Spaces with her tomorrow at like 7:30. I think 7:30 tomorrow evening. I can't remember the exact time off my head, but make sure that you guys stop by Twitter in order to check that out. That'll be fun. Roth, I cannot say your name. I'm so sorry for that. Roth Burskane said Rice is not worth the headache for me. I don't blame you, right? Oh, Rachel says it's at 7:30 EST. Perfect. Twitter Spaces tomorrow at 7:30 EST. And I get, Rice, the headache, and I get that for sure because there's a lot of guys who it's literally like let's say Bucky Irving, right? That's a good one to comp because obviously not the same issues in terms of legal stuff, but in terms of actual like skepticism around his ability to stay on the field, injury issues, how he's recovering and whatnot, when he's going to be ready, how much involvement we're hearing, like literal 1B situation for Kenneth Gainwell. And as much as people want to say like, oh, what happened last year was an anomaly, I defend Kenneth Gainwell a lot. I like Kenneth Gainwell as a prospect. He spent the majority of his time in Philadelphia, which unfortunately, as you know, with Philadelphia's offense, although they've changed coordinators and Saquon was not there for at least his rookie season, right? But when you're looking at how the Philadelphia offense has operated, like they felt very comfortable with operating with a lead back. So he was just he was back there. He had very little utilization because he wasn't the lead back, finally getting the opportunity in Pittsburgh to showcase his abilities as a third down back and pass catcher, blocking, fantastic. And while he is a smaller back, he can be very successful on the ground as well. Not super successful, right? I'm not expecting him to be a 3-down back whatsoever, but, right, probably someone who is going to get some decent play and be a big nuisance for Bucky Irving. So again, that's, but when people are drafting, they're like, oh, he's Bucky Irving. We know the upside is high. Yeah, but it's, how much of a headache do you want to have in case it does get into a weird situation, right? In case he does get injured. And then we have a timeline where we have zero clue if he's going to be back in 2 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks, right? So headache, guys, it's preference right there. So I don't blame you on that one. But speaking of Rashee Rice, we do have to talk about Patrick Mahomes because that is obviously a significant part to his game. And as I have been, I think I mentioned I was releasing a wide variety of videos, and I get some feedback here. And one of the issues people took was I was being pro Patrick Mahomes, which doesn't happen often, right? But being pro Patrick Mahomes because I really love him as a draft target this season. I got a lot of pushback of people that didn't feel very comfortable with him, saying he doesn't have a reliable wide receiver one, and he's hard to trust in fantasy. So that is our mailbag question number one, right? More of a general topic here. Is there a reason to be skeptical with Patrick Mahomes and the combination of, issues that he has, none of them, in his personal life, but that of Rashee Rice. Then you've got him coming off of the injury, right? Again, we've talked about the fact that Travis Kelce is aging. He can still, catch the ball, garner all the targets, but yards after the catch is not really going to be a thing for him, right? And we haven't seen these secondary options really stepping up and being extremely reliable, right? You look at a Joe Burrow and you're sitting there and you're throwing to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and you're able to have even your third options, your Andre Yoshivas and whatnot come in and just, provide a little bit of pop, right? And unfortunately, just doesn't feel like Patrick Mahomes has that. And we're very reliant on Rashee Rice staying on the field. But I think it's a little bit of an overreaction there because Patrick Mahomes, it's not as if we have not seen him make it work with literally nothing on the field. because he got it done last season in a big way. While Rashee Rice was suspended, Xavier Worthy was missing games with the injury. He was sitting there working with Hollywood Brown and Tyquan Thornton and Juju Smith-Schuster, right? And we were streaming them. We had legitimate streaming options of waking up and saying, God, am I starting Hollywood Brown this morning? Because it's Patrick Mahomes, right? And he can work with literally anyone. So while I get the sentiment in terms of obviously Rice being a risk to go off the field at any given time and aging weapons. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's Patrick Mahomes. And at his current, it's, let's see, it's been QB 13, but I haven't looked in a couple days. So let me just make sure where it's at. Yeah, it's still QB 13. Cool. QB 13, Patrick Mahomes in ranking. I mean, I just think that's egregious. Like, you can't tell me that you're willing to take the risk on a guy like Jackson Dart, right? You're willing to take, and God, I love Trevor Lawrence, right? But you're willing to take the risk on Trevor Lawrence, who I do think has legitimate overall QB1 upside because of that rushing upside that he finally showcased again. Like we always knew he had it, but for some reason it kind of like dwindled and went away. And then towards the back half of the season last year came on very strong and was what really pushed him to be literally the overall QB1 in the back half of the season there. So, but at the end of the day, he's still an extremely risky option, right? A Jalen Hurts, extremely risky option. A Jaden Daniels, fantastic rookie season, still an extremely risky option, right? And we worry about, persistent potential injury issues with him, change in offensive system as well. So all of these quarterbacks have something that is lingering over them as well. Joe Burrow, who, gets injured every other season, right? So technically this season is an on season for Joe Burrow, FYI, if you're looking at weird patterns there that make no logical sense and have no fantasy analysis in it. That's one with him. But the discount that we are getting on Patrick Mahomes is just kind of crazy to me. You could make the argument maybe that perhaps his mobility will be a little bit limited. And mobility and rushing upside does tend to, especially last season, play a very significant role in his production. But again, if he's out there at OTAs right now, this is plenty of time before this season kicks off. I would not expect him to somehow be a statue for the entire season. Maybe it takes him a couple of games to really trust his leg. But at the end of the day, thinking that he is going to have some kind of massive regression for the entire year feels a little bit short-sighted for me on that one. Jump into the chat here to see what you guys are saying about Patrick Mahomes. Good one here from Stephen King. I will take the upside of Justin Herbert over Mahomes. I could agree with that. I feel good about Justin Herbert, right? You guys know I'm pro Quentin Johnson. Gosh, I always get worried when I say somebody's name 5 million times in the offseason that it's going to backfire on me. But I can't help it. The ranking is just, it's offensive to me. It's offensive to Quentin Johnston, and I must stand up for him on that one. And then you got Lad McConkey, who is always so incredibly reliable. Trey Harris, I think, is going to make progress for it as well. Very talented. Even their deeper options have promise. I liked Keandre Lambert-Smith, so they've got depth, right, for the sake of Justin Herbert. Then we're talking about Aronde Gadsden. Something happens, you got in David Njoku as well. My God, they're solid at running back. 3 deep, really, now that they've got Keaton Mitchell there is a nice change of pace. So what is there not to love, right? Their offensive linemen should be healthy to start the season. They also retooled and adjusted to add more depth and make changes at the offensive line as well to help negate if any injury issues were to happen. So I'm very pro Justin Herbert as well this season. And sometimes I feel like his ranking has been a little bit aggressive in times. And also we've got the, very beneficial change in offensive coordinator, Mike McDaniel. But yeah, of that grouping right there, I will bypass a Jalen Hurts, who I love, but I will bypass a Jalen Hurts in order to get a Patrick Mahomes at a better price. I will bypass a Jackson Dart, but I'm probably not going to bypass a Justin Herbert just because of the massive upside that he has in this new offensive transition this year. So very excited about that one for sure. Big Noggin says, I think Patrick Mahomes can challenge for top 6 if the year goes well for him. I think too. And especially, again, if Rashee Rice is out there and does exactly what we expect him to do, which again, all he's got to do is be on the field and be healthy, right? Because every time he has been on the field, and it's just been health, right? Every time he has actually been on the field, he has ascended and performed at this top level, right? To where at the point where we trust him, right? Mind you, this is also a contract year for him, which is funny because I thought that, and I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one. I think there are other people as well that kind of felt the same way based off of all draft analysis. But I was very surprised they did not take a pass catcher with their first round pick. I mean, they have a lot of positions that are of greater needs, but it was very peculiar to not do that when you've got a guy as your wide receiver one heading into a contract year that is at risk to just not make it through the season due to actions of his own at any given time. So I was a little surprised on that. But if everything goes right, Mahomes will bounce back to where he was, because we finally, I had kind of cooled off on Patrick Mahomes there for a while, I'm not going to lie, just because we had that surge of young rushing quarterbacks and they all had just so much higher upside than he had. Because again, natural pocket passer, while he does, run and rely on his legs and he can, score with them, at the end of the day, it takes a lot of volume to surpass a Lamar Jackson, right? But I think what we finally saw last season is going to help him get back to the version that we see being a consistent top 5 option, right? And I also think that the change in offensive coordinator away from Matt Nagy, good God, thank you, back to Eric Bieniemy, who, for what it's worth, obviously may never be a head coach, right? Maybe doesn't have that in him, but he executes Andy Reid's offense well, better than Matt Nagy, in my opinion. So I'm excited to get back to those days for him. Oh, this was a good question here, or a good comment here from Big Noggin. Says his upgrades at pass catching running backs in Andy Reid's system with Eric Bieniemy back. Agree again on that. Eric Bieniemy back has me in on Mahomes. He doesn't need a wide receiver core to make the difference. Yeah, I like that Eric Bieniemy thing as a side note as well, because again, my issues with Matt Nagy never ending. He was treacherous for the running back groups. When we saw Isaiah Pacheco, the version of Isaiah Pacheco that we thought was, oh my God, we found our late round truther, right? Like that version was the one coached by Eric Bieniemy. The version that we saw over the past, that was the version that failed and did that nasty committee with Kareem Hunt. That was Matt Nagy. So I'm happy to get back to us. Like, we got Kenneth Walker, we got Eric Bieniemy back. Let's commit to an effective run game, effective utilization of the running backs. And again, there are a lot of solid pass catching backs there as well. They're deep, right? So yeah, it's a good offensive situation there. Let's see here. Back to Donald Glaspie says here in the KC might add the cheetah. I think that's a cheetah. Is that a cheetah? I can't see. I'm assuming that's a cheetah there. Emoji. Which is possible. Again, that's another one that they got to keep on a legal leash. But if he can recover, I think that's one. I feel like I low-key feel like he's reached the Odell Beckham part of his career. Who ironically has returned to action. But I feel like he's reached the Odell Beckham part of his career where he might not be active in week 1 and perhaps takes more time to recover and is brought back later in the season, perhaps for a Super Bowl run. That kind of makes a lot of sense to me. So that should be an interesting one. That's always interesting from a fantasy perspective, kind of like a wait and see situation if we're going to have fantasy relevance from them. From C Gold for 130. I hope I am making power moves with heavy digs. I hope I am making power moves with heavy digs, Debo, and a bit of Keenan on teams. However, super burnt last year because by my value calculator of Amari, any value plays well worth the risk. I think. I tried to defend Debo last year because I didn't think the weight gain was that bad. And there might have been. I mean, it's not like anyone was really cooking in that Washington offense for when Jaden Daniels was in. He wasn't exactly performing at his peak level. And, Marcus Mariota operates offense as best he can, but obviously he doesn't supply massive volume to, the pass catchers. So you could make the argument with Debo. I feel a lot better about Diggs, though, right? And I also think that Diggs is a realistic target to be that Washington wide receiver too. Because I'm highly skeptical of this Brandon Ayuk situation. I understand the connection and the pipe dream that they got going on there. But when we see a guy be out of football for an extended period of time, we know he's got disgruntled issues in general. I have a hard time believing he's going to want to come there and be a second fiddle to Terry McLaurin, which is what would factually happen. So if Washington has any sense, they would not go that direction, and preferably head towards the Diggs direction, because while Diggs has his issues, in his older years, he has made sure that they're not issues on the field, right? In terms of locker room chemistry and drama and anything like that. And coming off the ACL injury, we did see him play a full season, handle 100 targets. I didn't see any issues. He looked fine. He is older, right? But I think Diggs is probably the one that I would take that chance with, just because I saw a nice full season from him that didn't show any massive regression concerns. So I would assume we could get a decent season out of him as well. So I like that with the Diggs. I'm curious with Keenan, though, because he could just go back. I suspect with Keenan that he will not want to exit the West Coast. So it's just a matter of if the Chargers want him back, or if any other team. But I suspect he just doesn't want to leave LA, and I don't blame him for that. Plus, when we're looking, if he did go back to LA's, I think is probably the better route for him. I do think that towards the end of the season, they were showing more preference towards trying to push Trey Harris forward a little bit. So probably wouldn't get massive production out of Keenan. I would lean the other direction, emphasis on Diggs with a little bit of Debo. Yeah, that would be there. And again, that counteracts the Amari Cooper thing, because Amari Cooper, it had been a while since we had seen him really, really peak level. But while last year wasn't peak level for Diggs, it was fine. I had no problems with the production that he had last year, right? Let's see here. Going back to the comments from Famous J. Hey, Mahomes has been an average fantasy QB, even less now with Kenny Walker. I often pass on Mahomes for Herbert, Goff, or Prescott and Goff. I do like all of those guys, especially Jared Goff, right? But what we saw from Mahomes last year was excellent. And that was the rebound addition of him using those legs a little bit more, and then kind of more strategic targeting towards, working with the wide receivers that he had, and then things picked up as well. But the production, on a per game basis last season, Mahomes was cooking there for a while. In fact, let's see here. Patrick Mahomes. Oh, good. I'm on the quarterback page. Patrick Mahomes was game log. QB 6, 20, 3, 4, 1, 5, 5, 22, 14. That was tougher defensive matchups, Buffalo and Denver. 10, 1, 25, 24, Houston, LA. He was cooking last season outside of, as long as it wasn't Houston, Denver, and LA Chargers, which is understandable because they thwart literally anybody and everybody, unless you just run it down their throats on them. Yeah, he was cooking. I liked what I feel like we really got back to seeing him really pick up, especially from a running perspective. So as long as he is, fairly mobile, I got no problem. Let's see here. Loving Life 748 says, saw you do an interview with Podfather a while back, and he couldn't get you to say bus when describing a player. Hilarious moment in a great interview. Still staying away from the B word. Nah, I've been forced into it. I still don't love it, right? Because I'll get an assignment to do a video that's like three running backs you must avoid, right? And naturally, I don't really take those stances, but that was the assignment. So I'm like, okay, let's push through this. And I'll do caveats you don't have to avoid this player, but yeah, I try to. There are very few. The only time I take very harsh stances on avoids or calling for busts is it's always typically a coaching issue. I feel like I've been maybe meaner than I should have been this offseason to Jackson Dart, but it's that I can't stand Matt Nagy. So it is what it is. I can't help that. But yeah, I try to not take like super, super aggressive stances. Lukewarm takes. No, I try, but I've been forced into it a little bit more recently. With hot takes and whatnot. And thank you, Easy A. You're so kind. Henry Odom says, hey, Tara, who do you trust more in redraft, Walker or Hampton? Hampton, yeah. And I love Walker, and there's no negative towards there. And I think I probably trust Walker a little bit more than consensus. Especially because, again, we were talking about, I do like the fact that Eric Bieniemy is back, and I trust that he will get the best out of the running backs here. But I would lean towards Hampton. My only mild concern that I have with Hampton is that it's possible that, which is why I do like Keaton Mitchell as a late round target. It's possible that we see more usage of Keaton Mitchell as a third down back from pass catching perspective. Again, because he just, he's like a budget version of Devon Achane, right? Just in profile wise, if Mike McDaniel is feeling a little nostalgic for him. But at the end of the day, he's a 3-down back. He can catch with Amari Hampton. I mean, is a 3-down back and he can catch and the Chargers offense, and for what it's worth, the offensive line, for all its problems, it was fine from a run blocking perspective. I am slightly concerned at, again, the way that we saw the split end up when he came back from the injury. The split between him and Kamani Vidal was a little disturbing, but again, we've got a change in regime here. So a better offense, better situation, more goal line opportunities. I do lean towards Hampton, especially because with Walker, the only concern that I have here with Walker is that when the Chiefs get into the red zone, Patrick Mahomes gets stingy in terms of wanting the touchdowns to come through him, whether that's through the air or a little bootleg and running, right? He likes to call his own number in the red zone, which can still benefit Walker if we get, some short passes he can catch, obviously. So perhaps we get some more receiving upside, receiving touchdowns to counteract there. But it is a wee bit concerning that if Mahomes is, again, good to go, obviously, and once his legs, feel he gets his sea legs under him, yeah, I get a little bit concerned that we might see some more rushing at the goal line or in the red zone for Mahomes. And that obviously does put a natural cap on the touchdown opportunities. And he can always just pass them as well. We would see games where Rashee Rice had 2 touchdowns in a single game, right? He's not getting them from extreme yardage, high red zone targets. So that would be my only concern there. That makes me lean towards Hampton a wee bit, but I like both of them. Thank you, Dante Demora. Appreciate it. Says, like the video. Let's go to another mailbag here. We're talking about David Montgomery. Why no love for David Montgomery? Montgomery is an interesting one for me because I like him. I like him a lot. I was a defender of David Montgomery in his Chicago days, which is funny because I'm a Packers fan, but defended of him when everyone was on the Khalil Herbert craze. And I was like, no, David Montgomery is the better, more reliable back. And guess, that those turned out to be facts. But I'm not going to lie. The age is not egregious, right? But I do get a little bit concerned that when we're looking at him and the point at which he is in his career, looking at him to kind of progress back to an RB1 when he has taken not a backseat really, but taken a massive reduction in workload over the past several years, kind of concerning because it's been a good 6 years since we've last seen David Montgomery put up RB1 numbers. So while obviously touchdowns were flowing in Detroit, there are changes and considerations that we have to make. Like consideration number one, we don't know for a fact. I do think that he's going to be a 3-down back, but we don't know for a fact that Woody Marks won't contribute. It's easy to say that he could go the way of Dameon Pierce, but it's also very possible that he can contribute from a 3rd-down perspective as well. And he did earn that trust last year. And I know you can look at it and say, well, he couldn't beat out Nick Chubb. Nah, I think the Texans were just kind of taking a cautious approach in terms of turning things over to a rookie. completely there, especially because Chubb was, he was reliable and steady from that perspective. So I think they were just kind of waffling back and forth before they truly said, all right, we can commit to this guy as our RB1. So there's that perspective. There's also the perspective that David Montgomery has been playing behind an excellent offensive line. We don't get that in Houston. I hope every single year, I hope that they are making the changes to finally get an offensive line that can do right by this team from a run perspective and from CJ Stroud's perspective as well. But again, I don't know if they made enough moves to really take that offensive line to the level that it would need, let alone definitely not to the level of that of a Detroit, right? So that's a concern as well. So he's going into a situation where he probably will handle more volume, but he's going into a situation where he is definitely going to be on a worse offense with a worse offensive line. So that's an issue, right? I think his ranking is appropriate, but I don't know if we should put him into the category automatically of, now he's what Joe Mixon was. I don't think that's the case because, again, they're coming off of two very different situations. Joe Mixon had been coming off back-to-back RB1 seasons when the Texans traded for him. Very different situations, right? So I am being a little bit more cautious with David Montgomery because I think he's a very safe pick, right? But when I'm looking in that range, let me look here at the rankings just so I can get the exact guys. When I'm looking at the range of running backs where David Montgomery is being drafted around, you've got guys, now granted, they've shifted up in rankings, but I would target guys before him like Cam Scatterbo, Quinshon Judkins, DeAndre Swift, honestly, even a Travion Henderson. And you guys know that I'm skeptical and concerned about Travion Henderson, but at the very least, I know it's a boom-bust situation where when the boom hits, 30 fantasy points. David Montgomery's not getting us that at this point in his career, right? Or you go after that, the guys after him and say, perhaps a Bashal Tutin pans out, right? So I don't mind it. I think it's a very safe pick, but I just don't know that we're going to get consistent top 10 upside from him as well. So I get it. I get why people want to target it because, you're drafting him as an RB2. Perhaps you just want to go with a safer option. But I just would rather shoot for some of the guys going right before him for higher upside as well. Donald Gillespie has said any chatter on Joe Mixon? None. I find it peculiar that we still have not seen him. I don't like. This might go down as one of the weirdest situations in fantasy football history. Because the man went down with an ambiguous injury that the Texans refused to tell us exactly what it was or where it even occurred, to what extent something happened, what a timeline could really be. It was so weird, right? So no, I feel like his career might be low-key at jeopardy. I've heard no chatter whatsoever in terms of there being potential there. Got a couple of other questions here in the video. Let's see here. Oh, Dante DeMora says, would you ever consider collabing with other creators on YouTube? I would. I haven't before just because I do probably a timing issue just because I do a lot of work for other companies. So in season, typically don't. But I will, like I just mentioned earlier, Rachel was in the chat and I'm doing a Twitter Spaces with her tomorrow. So sometimes I do stuff like that. Sometimes. Loving Life says, I like the team fade. Yeah, I like the term fade better than bust. Yeah. Got any early fades? Cortland Sutton and Xavier Worthy for me. The Cortland Sutton one hurts my feelings, but I'm fading Denver as a whole. Outside of Bo Nix, I agree with you. I like fade better. I'm fading Denver as a whole. So I'm with you on that one. My God, what a situation, right? I don't see any way that I will be able to I've got a dynasty team with Jalen Waddle and I'm so distraught over that. I don't see any way that you ever feel comfortable with any. Actually, we can talk about RJ Harvey too, because RJ Harvey had shoulder surgery this offseason, so he's recovering. Do you feel really comfortable putting anyone for Denver in your starting lineup just because of the fact that it's such a split situation, right? With the backfield, you've got Dobbins that is going to take the early down work. And then you've got Harvey contributing from a pass catching perspective. And then my problem is again, we had Jonah Coleman drafted. So if not Montgomery on my mind looking at the screen, if Dobbins goes down, then you can just put Jonah Coleman in. It's the same kind of back, right? So I don't like that. I don't love their running back committee situation. And then I don't like the fact that we've got Cortland Sutton, Jalen Waddle, Pat Bryant showed promise last year. Marvin Mims is someone who every now and then Sean Payton likes to use at a little gimmicky level. He defended him a little bit last week, or this week, I believe. Then we have Troy Franklin, who again has that college loyalty from Bo Nix, and he really popped last season. So they've got an extremely deep group of wide receivers. And like if I were to compare it to a New Orleans, now granted, New Orleans, drafted some young talent, so hopefully that can pan out for them. But if you compare it to a New Orleans, the reason why we like Juwan Johnson last season is because no one could catch the ball outside of Chris Olave, particularly once Rashid Shaheed was traded. Even then, before then, there was some involvement because they were just literally 3 deep. But after that, it was 2 deep, right? Not a lot of depth. Unlike Denver, who's got depth on top of depth. So yeah, I don't want any piece of that nonsense at all. I talked about Jackson Dart as one that I'm just not comfortable with drafting because I think there's going to be a lot of boom bust high lows and it might not be predictable. It's going to rely heavily on legs. By all accounts, the Giants want to be run heavy. Next season, Cam Scatterbo just said that he's prepared to run through people. My God. But I think he might be CTE proof. So, whatever. Can he get a concussion? A guy that was running his head into brick walls? I don't know. So they want to be run heavy. They're 3 deep at running back as well. So if they want to give a stupid amount of workload to Scatterbo and, Tracy with a little bit of supplementing of Singletary, like they can. So I'm not crazy about that situation. And plus we have Malik Neighbors, who obviously is, still recovering from his injury. Is he going to be ready week 1? Doesn't seem like it. I could easily see where this is a situation where it, starts on the season on the pup, maybe makes it even to week 6. And, before he gets taken off or something like that, pass catcher depth beyond that. That's why I like Isaiah Likely a lot, because beyond that, it's, Darnell Mooney, who I do like, but, no, last year was ugly, unfortunately. Malachi Fields, I didn't love as a prospect. Darius Slayton has given us nothing. So, yeah, not a lot of depth there from a pass catching perspective if they don't have Malik Neighbors to start off early in the season. Concerns there for sure. Other wide receivers, I don't think I really have any major wide receiver fades outside of Denver, right? That's an obvious one for me. But no other major fades at wide receivers. Running back, I don't really feel super comfortable with. So again, I will either be, I'm definitely not 0 RB this season. Hero RB, but perhaps robust RB as well, just because I do think that I want to grab, before you get to that RB 24 mark, grab your running backs. RB 25, I can maybe push it a little bit because we've got Bashal Tootin there. But after that, you get into little, suspect territory. So no real massive fades other than Bucky Irving would be another one that I'm fading as well. I'm not going to have a lot of shares of Bucky. I know as the ADP drops, people want to make the investment and buy the dip. Guys, I don't feel good about that situation whatsoever. We already, again, I talked about this before, but it's short, Zach Robinson is the offensive coordinator. Now, Zach Robinson was in Atlanta last season, the same Zach Robinson that was giving touches at the goal line to Tyler Algier, who, no offense to him, giving touches to Tyler Algier over Bijan feels a little criminal, right? No offense to Algier, I like you, but that feels irresponsible. So why should I trust that same offensive coordinator to make sure he gives the proper goal line touches to Bucky Irving? You didn't do it with Bijan. Why would I trust you with Bucky? So yeah, that's again. So when it comes to fades, Onyx, like a lot of times, fades are often heavily related to coaching situations too, right? So Dante says also fading Sutton and Worthy, throw in Marvin Harrison Jr. I will say, as Marvin Harrison Jr.'s ADP drops, I don't mind it. I have never been one to throughout the course of his very young career, I don't really draft Marvin Harrison Jr. It's never felt worth it to me. The ADP has always been egregious, right? But it's dipping into that wide receiver 3 territory. And I'm looking at it like, I mean, they're going to be playing from behind in every single game this season, every single one. There's literally like maybe 2 games on the schedule for Arizona where they may not be playing from behind. They're chasing points throughout the duration of the season. Which again, I love Jacoby Brissett to the moon. If I could get a guarantee that Jacoby Brissett was going to start the entire season, I would have zero problem drafting Marvin Harrison Jr., especially at his ADP. My only concern would be whenever they decide that they need to experiment and try out Carson Beck. Maybe he hits. I doubt it. And if he doesn't hit, you've already pissed off Jacoby Brissett. It's going to turn into a weird situation where you can't go back to him because he's like, he is frustrated. He's already mad about the money, right? So perhaps he gets angry and, says, nope, I've got an ankle injury. I'm not going back in. So, and then you're stuck with Carson Beck for the remainder of the season. That's the only concern that I have. Outside of that, as long as Jacoby Brissett is at quarterback, they're throwing 40 plus a game, like easy. In order, because they're playing some nasty teams, right? In terms of having to chuck the ball, because they're good defenses that they're going to be facing, but they're going to have to chuck the ball constantly with that schedule. Ugly. So all things equal, I will take that risk probably a little bit with Marvin Harrison Jr. and just ride the heat and the hot hand of them playing with Jacoby Brissett, throwing from behind, because for what it's worth, Marvin Harrison Jr. played only a few games. I looked at it. I've got the exact, but I can't look it up and figure it out on the spot. And I don't want to go search for the information, but there was a specific number of games that they played together, right? Where Marvin Harrison Jr. was healthy, because we got to remember in the back half of the season, when he finally did come back from that injury, he was playing through an injury. So we can't really take those games into account. But when he did have that little sliver of health that he was playing with Jacoby Brissett, he was fine. He saw an increase in targets. Wasn't the massive upside that we would like, but it would definitely pay off for a wide receiver 3 ADP. He was playing over Michael Wilson and more productive when they were both healthy together. So, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's Trey McBride, right? But as long as that ADP stays in a low-end wide receiver 3 range, I don't mind it. Just because, again, volume is going to be there for sure. Yeah, and Loving Life says Marvin Harrison Jr. in weekly best ball, not redraft. Best ball would be a great way to do it, right? Because then you can ride the peak. You don't have to worry about kind of like managing out a full-term, long-term commitment there. You can ride the wave on a weekly basis with Jacoby Brissett and not have to worry about what happens if, right, they switch to Carson Beck. Dante DeMora says Cam Ward is low-key him. The offensive line and wide receivers were just awful last year. I agree with you on Cam Ward. He is a guy that in Superflex I am willing to take a chance on. Am I willing to take a chance in terms of saying I will let him be my dedicated QB2? I don't know. But it might be a situation where I double up and draft him alongside another low-end QB2. And kind of do it that way, and obviously take a higher end quarterback, right? But I like Cam Ward a lot because, again, while I don't believe in Brian Daboll as a head coach, I do think he's a great offensive coordinator, and has proven that he can develop a young quarterback, right? And that's key, right? And again, that's why I'm so skeptical of Jackson Dart. He's still young. He's in his second year. He needs a coach that can develop. And Matt Nagy does not mesh well with young quarterbacks. He can't develop them. He's proven multiple times he cannot develop them. So when I'm looking at a Cam Ward, yeah, the Titans are continuing to make improvements to their team, right? They're going to try and upgrade the offensive line. They added in, obviously, a massive pass catcher. I think the young guys, I don't believe in Calvin Ridley anymore. I think he's cooked. But I think the young guys, obviously, and adding in Wan'Dale Robinson was a good move for what it's worth, because I think Wan'Dale and Cardell Tate will play very well off of each other. That's a nice little 1-2 combo there, right? Cam Ward throwing to Cardell Tate on the outside. You get Wan'Dale Robinson in the slot. You're working in, I think they're going to give preference to Calvin Ridley. But at the end of the day, I think that probably one of the younger wide receivers is going to end up beating out Calvin Ridley as the season goes on, right? So that's a nice little receiving core. I don't mind that at all. They'll progress and develop as the year goes on. And Cam Ward finished the season strong. We're running low on time, so I won't pull up the numbers. But if you go back and look at what he did in the back half of the season against very tough defenses, that's a promising quarterback right there, deserving of that first overall pick that he got. So I feel very positive about him for sure. I wish he had a little bit more rushing upside, but very talented, very talented. Dante Moore said, yeah, so you're not out on Tennessee. Amastel says, I just need my boy Rice to stay on the straight and narrow for like 4 or 5 more years. I got him on a Dynasty team, so I need that too. Do I trust that probation? Yikes. I'm so scared. And you can't sell him, right, in Dynasty because you're not going to get what he's worth. Because I do legitimately believe that if he's on the field with Patrick Mahomes, he has weekly top 5 upside. But man, you got to stay on the field, buddy. And then from Amstel, what if Cam Ward what if Cam Ward is just another miss like Anthony Richardson and JJ McCarthy? Not everybody works out at quarterback position. No, and I don't believe in JJ McCarthy in any way, shape, or form. And Anthony Richardson, good God. I'm very happy to say I did not jump on that hype train and get stuck with any shares of that one. But Cam Ward, I promise you, what he showed at the end of last season, I am going to pull it up. So, to defend him a little bit there. What he showed at the end of last season, highly impressive, right? Just from a general, not from high upside fantasy performances, but from competent management of the game as a quarterback and not making mistakes, working with what you have. Because again, unfortunately, I love Jim Radike, younger talent there. But again, it's not that, he didn't have a wide receiver 1, arguably not a wide receiver 2, right? So he was working with what he had. But after the bye week, the Texans I was reading the Texans. After the bye week, Tennessee faced Houston, Seattle, Jacksonville, Cleveland, San Francisco, KC, New Orleans, Jacksonville. Only one of those teams would be San Francisco that had a defunct defense at that point because of the injuries, right? Over that time period, he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 touchdowns. 4 straight games with 2 touchdowns in each one of them. Push pretty good volume, not massive volume, right? But did push good volume in terms of attempts, not super efficient with it. But again, that had a lot to do with personnel. Now you got Carnell Tate and Wando Robinson added in there as well. So yeah, I like that we saw him throw for volume. I think we're going to see a lot more of that this season. It was a very promising into the season where he did look like a competent QB1. And I never saw that out of JJ McCarthy. And I watched. And not one time did I look and say, yeah, there's promise here. So no, I feel good about Cam Ward and the progress that he'll make. I can't say the same about JJ McCarthy, sadly. I think that one is unfortunately maybe cooked. Love this comment here. Turd Ferguson. I feel like Coker is going to be and thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. I feel like Coker is going to be a late smash this year. When he finally was healthy last year, he did well. With a healthy year, he could be great. I agree. And I like the contract that he got. It's funny. I was reading the comments on his contract announcement, and a lot of people, or I saw one weird comment where people were like, his agent did it, wow, he needs to fire his agent. This was not a good deal because, it's not a ton of money per year. You got to remember, this man has not stayed on the field. To be somebody with 0 draft capital, right? To have not played a full season whatsoever. And the encouraging part that you have shown is the ability to, when you do stay healthy at the end of the year, you can pop, right? So there's promise there. We know you're talented, but we need to actually see you complete a full season. To get a multi-year contract is really incredible because for all we know, he could go through the exact same thing where he deals with an injury, misses half the season or whatnot. And then are the Panthers really going to give you a contract, any guaranteed money? No, right? So good for him. Going ahead, locking down that money, getting yours, because at the end of the day, you don't have massive draft capital and you could easily fall to the wayside of a guy that's looking to hopefully just get a $2 million contract, 1-year deal next season. So that was smart. I love him as well. I do. And I think there's promise for him to move forward and carry exactly what he did last season and build on that. That playoff game was incredible. The back half of the season showed a lot of promise. They, added in Chris Brazzell, was a good prospect, right? But at the end of the day, I think the preference, especially with contract given, still indicates that is somebody that they want to keep around and have as their starter, right? So him as the second look with Tedero McMillan, and hopefully cross our fingers we can, get some more volume pushed for Bryce Young. That's the key there. I mean, you've got talent, right? The point that we need is you have to let Bryce Young throw the ball more than 30 times a game. You have to. There were literally like 4 games where he threw over 200 passing yards, and it wasn't his fault, when he was able to actually throw for volume, because for what it's worth, the Panthers defense wasn't actually bad. It kept them very competitive in games, so that games never got rarely got out of hand, which meant that they didn't have to chuck the ball. They could lead on the ground game. Well, it wasn't super effective, but it was good enough, right? So they ran an offense that was kind of inefficient, low volume, but didn't have to do too much because they weren't really chasing points aggressively. So that was kind of like the weird thing that kind of kept them from pushing actual volume. But when he did throw for volume, Bryce Young was successful. So I'm hoping that they can just continue to build on that, let him push a little bit more volume, and then we can really get our wide receivers going there for sure. Amstel says, was never in on Anthony Richardson. Accuracy is something you either have or not. Yeah. I know the appeal of a big arm is all wonderful, but at the end of the day, if you cannot hit a guy over the middle, what's the point? Turd Ferguson says, I also may be biased as a Panthers fan, but still keep pounding. I like the Panthers. I like Bryce Young. I try to defend him. Sweet little cherub he is. Hopefully they can push forward there, and hopefully we get Jonathan Brooks actually staying on the field healthy, and he can help out there. And I know people have feelings about preferring Chuba Hubbard because he has been solid, but I would like to see Jonathan Brooks progress forward there and get involved in the game and see where that heads. I do like him a lot here for sure. Miles Logan says, I'm hella late. Yeah, well, it's fine. It's fine because this can always be played at any time. Welcome and thank you for joining. And then Amastel says, I like this comment as well. I love Mekhi Lemon's play style. Am I wrong to think that he can end up just as good as Tate and Tyson eventually? No, I don't think you're wrong about that at all. I feel like so Jalen Hurts is not perfect, right? But the offense is changing. And to say that he can't throw over the middle when they haven't had a player like Mekhi Lemon on the team per se, they're going to adjust to the personnel that they have. Mekhi Lemon is not filling A.J. Brown's role, right? They're adjusting to a new identity, and I like what Mekhi Lemon brings as well. Not on the field right now. Dealing with a hamstring injury, but at the end of the day, I think there's promise there for both him and Devontae Smith as well. So we'll see how this goes. But I think Mekhi Lemon is very interesting. His ADP is very reasonable right now for a rookie wide receiver that's going to see the field health-wise, right? Is health pending, is going to see the field immediately and more than likely going to be immediately the wide receiver too. Yeah, I'm good with it. That's why I feel good about him, Tate, and Tyson, right? Because I don't have to worry about the quarterback situation with those guys. I know that, there's skepticisms around Cam Ward and Tyler Shuck, but they've both shown promise as well. Good coaching situations as well. So yeah, I feel good about that for sure. Vegas Super Saiyan says, love that you're on. Thank you. Thank you for joining in. And then Terry Ferguson says, I call Bryce Miles Morales. Oh, that's a good comp. I like that. And anyone who thought Anthony Richardson was going to be great clearly didn't watch him in Florida. Nothing against him, but he was not ready for the NFL. I feel like the NFL got very, what's a kind way to put it? There was a time period where him and Trey Lance, right? They got into a time period where they were pushing forward and trying to build on promise and really overdrafting people egregiously. I feel like we've gotten away from that at the very least. Like we're not having that anymore. Thank God. Like I feel like Taylon Green would have got trumped up significantly in the same year that Anthony Richardson was drafting, right? Because you're like, oh my God, big arm. It's like, well, yeah, but he's inaccurate, right? That's a problem. Vegas Super Saiyan says, debate. The Bears have the hardest schedule. They did not have one 1,000-yard wide receiver in 2024 and 2025. I think it'll be the same this year. Caleb targets off targets. 1 of 5 of his passes, 3 run first. Bears no bueno. I think people underestimate how run heavy they were last season. Which I think it's because we get like, we're looking from a fantasy perspective. We're like, yeah, DeAndre Swift is cool, but it's not like massive upside. And it's like, okay, well, when you combine DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai together, you were getting a lot of volume. So they were a run heavy team for what it's worth. They were like top 5 in rush attempts last season. And yeah, Caleb runs, but not to the degree of a Josh Allen, right? So they were top 5 because they were run heavy, right? And while I'm hoping that the thinned out wide receiver core with the exit of DJ Moore and not making a major addition is going to help out here. My preference there is Colston Loveland. I think the tight end is the best way to attack it, right? And that's why when we come to like drafting and I look at Caleb Williams, I don't mind drafting Caleb Williams, but I would rather go ahead of him and draft a Justin Herbert or go behind him and draft a Dak Prescott, Patrick Mahomes, just because, aim for more volume, guys, because I do think it's possible that we run into the same situation where, and I don't even think it's like as much of a capabilities issue as much as they don't force unnecessary volume. So there are games where Caleb is just factually not going to throw for a ton of volume, right? Which hurts him and the wide receivers as well. The ADPs aren't egregious. I do, think, maybe Burden's is a little bit high. I think Rome's is a little bit more appropriate. But I'm not necessarily fading the pass catchers because at least none of them are pushed up in the top 20. But Loveland at the end of the day is my preferred target there. Loving Life says, which of the O-lines have improved the most? I mean, natural one is definitely going to be, it's funny. Before that, so Giants. I think the Giants are on a really good path there. Chargers, in addition to getting their guys back healthy, they made a lot of draft picks and moves in free agency to help reinforce even further. Because there were a couple of duds that were healthy even on their offensive line. Like I forget what's his name, that they tried to retread and make work. It didn't work out. And so they've made a lot of changes. I think that we will see a drastic improvement, not just because of the health, but just because of other changes in personnel that they made. So those are 2 that are really critical for me. Carolina keeps improving their line. That's one that we should point out as well. Doing a good job of continuing to improve their line. And then Cleveland was one where I felt really good about. And I'm like, okay, I'm feeling good. They've made changes. Changes can either work out perfectly or they can go sideways. And then Joe Patonio retired. And so now that makes me question a little bit. And now I have to dig in further to see if they were actually prepared for that to happen or not. But before that, I was feeling good. So maybe their progress, but the loss of a veteran like that is pretty gruesome. So I'm going to have to do a little bit digging to see if they were actually properly prepared for that to happen. But those are the main ones that I think have made good improvement. Donald asks, who's my team? My team is Green Bay. I'm a long-term Packers fan, which doesn't make logical sense. long story short, I grew up in South Carolina. So shout out to the Carolina Panthers, who unfortunately I'm not a fan of, unfortunately, because when I'm a little older. When I was a child, the Panthers didn't exist. So everyone in South Carolina had different teams, and you just picked something else. And the Panthers, they did a good job of eventually going into Carolina and grabbing fans, but that wasn't a possibility when I was a kid. So I'm a Packers fan. My brother's a Titans fan. I've got an uncle that's a Colts fan. I do have one uncle that was an Atlanta fan. Yeah. So we've got I got an uncle that's a Pittsburgh fan, an uncle or grandma that's a Cowboys fan. So yeah, basically, no streamlined kind, but I was a very dedicated Packers fan to the core. My room, which was a terrible idea, was painted gold and yellow, which was, again, a terrible idea. Because can you imagine when the sun comes in the morning and hits and your walls are Packers yellow? Awful. I don't know what I was thinking, but I lived with it. Yeah, I was a very loving Packers fan. That was my team. No, God. But while the Panthers didn't exist while I was tiny, I did obviously stay there because I went to Clemson. So I stayed there through my early 20s. And so I did have to watch a lot of Panthers, because back then you had to watch, it was literally just, we were watching the Panthers or the Falcons, and that was the only regional games that we could get. So I watched, unfortunately, a lot of Jake the Loam. Unfortunately, had to do that. That was not fun. Going back to the comments here, let's see, we'll do a few more and then we'll wrap things up. I say I got to get these kids off to bed, but they're on summer vacation and they stay up way later than they should, which is very irritating for me. Vegas, Super Saiyan says the Bears coaching is smart. Depending on the CB matchup, and a different wide receiver will be targeted more every week. Yeah. And they know how to utilize their wide receivers, and that's why different one goes off. Ben Johnson's a very intelligent coach. Very intelligent coach. And that's also that I say why sideways. Like, knowing the coaching tendencies and which teams like to play matchups is really good for fantasy football. Like at Jacksonville, the reason why I like Parker Washington a lot, provided Travis Hunter is not competing and is primarily playing defense, the reason I like him a lot, even though I do believe that Brian Thomas will bounce back, is because Liam Cohen is the same way in terms of playing matchups. So if the tougher coverage is on Jacoby Myers and Brian Thomas Jr., that's why we had Parker Washington getting those extremely high upside games. They would clamp down on Brian Thomas, clamp down on Jacoby Myers, and suddenly you'd be looking at 10 targets for Parker Washington because they're playing matchups, right? So it's really key. From Amstel, you have the 111. Are you taking Stowers, Chris Bell, or Jonah Coleman? So I don't like that Stowers is not heavily utilized in minicamp right now. Maybe that's changed over the past week. I did not look to see if there was an update, but he was not participating earlier in OTAs, not for any particular reason, but not really being utilized. That was a little concerning, but I think I would still lean towards Stowers on that one, just like long term. I do kind of feel like Dallas Goedert is still going to be the guy this year. It's a 1-year contract, though, and it could be very similar to what we saw last year with Loveland, that you take a back seat, right? And that eventually you're able to push your way forward at the closeout of the season. So I would take that chance with Stowers that, hey, promise might not be there initially, but maybe back half of the season, and then at least in the future, once Goddard is gone, because tight end is a very prominent role in that offense. So, and Jalen Hurts loves a tight end. So yeah, I would lean Stowers on that one. Terry Ferguson says, that's fine. I wasn't born in the Carolinas. I was in Alabama and grew up Florida around Bucs fans. And when I found out the Panthers were their rivals, I became a Panthers fan. I love that. Things built out of spite, right? I didn't like the Broncos, so it was a very natural transition to like Green Bay. And then Falls Junior Indian says, I live in Tennessee but grew up in Milwaukee. My son played. Oh, your son played for Montana. St. Julius had a rookie, Julius Davis. Montana State, Julius Davis had a rookie invite to the Broncos, and my son from another mother signed undrafted with the Jets. Oh, Maury Bamba. That's nice. Oh, that's always nice to have fandom that has a nice emotional attachment to it. I love that. And then Jazz says strict roster limit in Dynasty. Ooh, rather keep Malik Washington, Pat Bryant, or neither. No family favoritism. I would rather keep Pat Bryant just from so I don't like, again, that the Denver wide receiver room is so stupid crowded, but what I've seen out of Pat Bryant just in general does show some promise. I just don't see the same thing with Malik Washington. Unfortunately, I feel like we got the best out of him last year that we could. And even, switching to a new quarterback, still, I would rather just go with flat out better talent, because perhaps injuries could happen that would, make Pat Bryant relevant again. If one of if Cortland Sutton or Jalen Waddle went down, right? And plus they're both, a little bit older. So, promise of the future could come. So yeah, I would lean towards Pat Bryant and hold on to that for a while for sure. And then Tony Bell, any optimism on Malik Neighbors? I'm going to use him as my keeper now. Ooh, I don't think so with the knee concerns. It depends on who your other keepers are, but for the price tag that you would be holding on to, well, actually, no, not really. If you're doing, I might still be open to it, because you've got some time. Let's see how the progress, how things progress forward. But yeah, I might use my keeper somewhere. That's painful. Oh, I hate that for you, because reality is that he really might start off on the pup. So I would hate that. That's your keeper, but you can work around it. You can work around it. At the very least, we know that he is going to be the heavy wide receiver one pass catcher with, very little competition there. So there's that, but that's tough. We got to wait on that to see what the timeline is on the recovery, and what other options you would have as keepers as well. And then Vegas Super Saiyan says, do you think Ramondre Stevenson is a steal going after round 6? And why does he go after Henderson? Stevenson, better pass blocker, 15 plus touches, catches passes, goal line carries. I think the ADP should be switched. This is a touchy subject for a lot of people. I'm not going to lie. Because I too said I was uncomfortable with Henderson, and I got a lot of angry pushback now. I think that it's I don't think the ADP should be flipped, because at the end of the day, Ramondre still is also risky because of the fact that, again, it can be a committee situation. They can switch back and forth at any time, right? So you might feel comfortable for a couple of weeks starting him and then super uncomfortable for another week. So I think his ADP is fine, right? I think Henderson's is too high. That's the counterbalance. But his is high because, again, rookie season was promising. Upside is super high. He has that, 2 touchdowns, 150-yard capability, right? Can pop off big runs, make a lot out of nothing. So I get it, but I don't love him at his ADP. My preference is not to draft TreVeyon Henderson. Because again, and part of the reason for that and the skepticism is that when you look at when he progressed forward, right? When he finally started to work in, it took Ramondre getting injured, right? And, even once Ramondre came back from the injuries, Henderson still held on to the starting role there. And then it kind of waned a little bit. And then, Stevenson was taking some goal line opportunities. And then when we got to the playoffs is when we saw the complete switch. It was done, right? So my worry is that Henderson was getting those carries in very easy games. When they got to the tough games, they leaned on Ramondre Stevenson because, again, he is the better blocker, right? He's the more reliable back. Perhaps Henderson worked on things in the offseason and is going to earn some trust. But my fear is that this Patriots schedule is going to be a lot tougher this year. So does the tougher schedule mean that we get more Ramondre Stevenson? He's not going away. Josh McDaniels likes him. Josh McDaniels was the one that drafted him, as an offensive coordinator, right? But Josh McDaniels was on the staff when they drafted Ramondre Stevenson. So that's his prospect. So it does make me a wee bit uncomfortable, right? He's not going anywhere. But yeah, the upside for Henderson is what makes him have the higher ADP. I think it should be a little bit lower because the risk of him being very boom bust, getting, 3 fantasy points in one game and then 30 in another. If you want to, ride the ups and downs, that's cool. But I would just like it at a lower ADP. But I think that Stevenson is a good draft pick at his ADP, and I think it's appropriate. Good draft pick for sure. Because he can get RB1 production on several weekly bases there. But that wraps things up, guys. I'm going to head out. We went a little longer, but that's cool. The chat was live, so why not? Why not go a little bit longer? So we had some good discussions here. I didn't even get to my discussion around Devon Achane. We'll save that for next week. That's another one that is very controversial as well. So I appreciate it. Donald Gillespie says, Grandma knows best, go Cowboys. She really was a deep Cowboys fan, man. She was dedicated. My mom didn't carry it over that well. I'd ask her, like, hey, name 5 Cowboys players. And she'd be like, Troy Aikman. But my mom was pretty, or my grandma, she was pretty, my Nana, she was pretty dedicated. She was a dedicated, deep Cowboys fan for sure. But that wraps things up. I appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you so much. Again, this is the Dear Miss Fantasy Show, available on all podcast platforms. And you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel. I always, never ask throughout the show. Whoops. But yes, subscriptions to the YouTube channel would be much appreciated. Have content, multiple videos coming out every single week. And we are getting closer and closer into the regular season. And of course, I'm here with you every single week at 8 p.m. EST every single Wednesday for live Q&A. So it's fun. Never miss it, guys. And also shout out to Player Profiler, who is the lead of this podcast, sponsor of this podcast. That is not sponsor, but the company of this podcast. Yeah, that's it. Shout out to Player Profiler. Make sure that you are going to the Player Profiler YouTube channel and podcast network as well. Lots of amazing content, especially more Dynasty content. Because I'm not going to lie, often I'm very in love with redraft. I love Dynasty, right? But I am very in love with redraft. I just like things changing, rosters changing on a yearly basis there. So I do talk a lot of redraft, but there's a lot of Dynasty and a lot of best ball content. I wish I talked more best ball, but a lot of best ball content on the Player Profiler channel as well, if you guys want to check that out. But other than that, I will talk to you all next week. And now my dog is barking, but at least he had the courtesy to do it at the end of the show. Talk to you guys later next week. Have a good one.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.